Namaste to everybody, and most importantly, a big thanks to Swami Sadatmananda Saraswati ji for joining us today. And we did not plan it, but it today happens also to be Puja Swamiji's uh, fifth anniversary of Swamiji's Samadhi, and very close to the 90th birthday of Puja Swamiji. So it makes us all very happy to have the auspicious presence of Swami Sadatmananda Ji Saraswati from Arsha Vidya Gurukulam, Anekatti, Coimbatore. Swamiji, many of the students here, they know you already because many of them, the majority of the students here in this class are from Bengaluru. So somehow or the other, they know of you. And to introduce Swamiji, I like to say that Swamiji is from the same state where our beloved Prime Minister Narendra Damodar Das Modi ji is from, and also from the same state where Sri Krishna's headquarters Dwarka was, and especially now that we are studying the Bhagavad Gita, all these are very important to us. And so Swamiji comes from that same state of Gujarat, and and so Swamiji's spiritual career began very early in a very young age. However, he did study engineering field, so many of us can relate to Swamiji. But soon after, in 1986, he started studying under Swami Brahmatmananda ji, who is also a senior disciple, who was a senior disciple of Swamiji in Vadodara in Gujarat. And so having spent several years with Swamiji, studying under him, he gained the Brahmachari Diksha in 1989. And then soon after, he went to Rishikesh and studied under Swami Visharadananda ji. And that is also where he studied under Swami Dayananda ji also. And in 1997, Swamiji got Sannyasa Diksha. And a few years before that itself, he started teaching in Bengaluru. So 1994, under the auspices of Arsha Vidya Kendram, he started teaching there. And our tradition is that the Prasthanatraya is taught. So Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutra with Bhashyam. And of course, Sanskritam is an important part of the tradition that Swamiji has started. And even prior to him, of course, but formalized by Puja Swamiji in recent times. And Swamiji used to follow that tradition. And then in 2014, Puja Swamiji, Swami Dayananda ji, requested Swami Sadatmananda ji to conduct the 3.5 year course in Coimbatore ashram in Anekatti, Arsha Vidya Gurukulam. So Swamiji moved to Coimbatore at that time and led that course. And it was in that course that I accidentally ended up, even though I did not, I came only in 2015, about a year and a half after the course started. And that's when I met Swamiji and Swami Shankarananda ji and Swami Sadatmananda ji. Both of them invited me to attend the course. They asked me to attend the course because I said I had nothing to do. And so I was very happy. It was a very happy coincidence for me to be in the ashram for 2 years under the feet of Swami Sadatmananda ji. And so I have very good memories, and all the inspiration, the desire to study in the ashram that I had for many years got fulfilled during that time. And so Swamiji, when he was in Bengaluru, he was, of course, he established a big program which is still going on, and he established many social activities which are also going on. And I've met some of his students from Bengaluru who used to visit the ashram. And then prior to that, 2011, 12, 13, he used to go to Rishikesh at the invitation of the Mahamandaleshwar ji of Kailash Ashram, and where he taught the Prasthanatrayi. And there Swamiji taught in Hindi. So Swamiji is very comfortable in English, Hindi, and of course his mother tongue Gujarati. And so that makes him a very versatile teacher. And he relates very well to people of all ages, which is very important for these days, especially where a lot of people come to our ashrams and so forth. And so I have personally learnt a lot from Swamiji just by being with him, just by being in the ashram itself, by observing how our sannyasis relate to each other, what is their commitment to the Shastram. And Swamiji, whenever we go to Swamiji's room, he's studying all the time. So sometimes we feel guilty that we are disturbing Swamiji. But it tells us, the message for us is, there is no end to the study and nobody can say it is all over. And because it is so vast, and there are all the original texts, and then there are commentaries, bhashyas, there are tikas, there are tippanis, and so it goes on and on and on. And so I learned that from Swamiji, that one has to be committed to this, and the Shastram takes us forward, and we just surrender to the Shastram. That attitude I got from Swamiji. And Swamiji also related some of his young days life. He said once that when he was studying in the ashram, and he used to, we have to wash our own clothes, dry our own clothes, and so forth. And he used to keep the washing of clothes till late in the night. And why? Because late in the night, 10:30, 11 o'clock, when the mind says go to sleep, then he used to wash his clothes, because that will disturb the sleep, and at least some time saved, half an hour, 1 hour time saved. So when I heard these kinds of things, I said, this is, I'm so proud of our culture, and that we are born in this society, this culture, and to be in the midst of a Swamiji like Swami Sadatmanandaji was something. I may not have expressed these things like this to Swamiji himself, but I am happy to share those words with you today. But without further ado, he is also teaching now an 18-month course in the Arshavidya Gurukulam. It's going on. So they have changed the model slightly. They used to conduct 3.5-year courses. So now they have divided it up somewhat, and so now there are a lot more students coming. And so I with folded hands, I want to thank Swami Sadatmanandaji on behalf of all our students of Bhagavad Gita class, and some others also who have joined here. And thank you, Swamiji. And Swamiji will talk for some time here, 45 minutes or so. And after that, we will open up the stage for questions. Thank you, Swamiji. Namaste. I will go ahead. Swamiji, you may have to unmute yourself now. If you can go to your screen and unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yes. So please tell me the time frame. Should I go up to 6 o'clock or 5:45?
You can go up to 6.
I complete, and then 15 minutes I leave for question answer.
You can go up to 6.
But is it okay for everybody? Yeah. We should not thrust ourselves.
Swamiji,
is it all right?
Our students
for everybody to go up to 6 and then 6:15. Huh?
Yeah, they're all showing their thumbs up, Swamiji. Okay. They're all showing their thumbs up. So we can go up to 6:15, Swamiji. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, here one good thing about online class, that you can disappear very easily. Here you don't have to take permission, so that's a good thing. Yes. Yeah. First of all, my namaskaram to all of you, wherever you are. Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara. Our life consists of experiences. The unit of life is experience. And every experience has got two factors. One is the object of experience. The other is the experiencer. Anubhava Vishaya, Anubhavita. Object and subject. And since experience is the unit of my life, So the quality of my life depends upon the quality of experiences. And therefore, everybody wants to improve the quality of one's experiences. It is very natural. And to improve the quality of experience, general approach followed is I would try to improve the quality of the object of experience. Means what I am confronting the world, that I want to improve. The comfort, food, dress, music, whatever I am confronting, I want to improve that. So that is the approach of most of the people, that if I improve the quality of the object of experience, then my experience will improve and thereby my life will improve. And this approach seems to work to some extent. If I have better food, I will feel happy. I listen to better music, I will feel more happy. And that is the approach people know, and that's what they follow. But this approach has got some limitations. First of all, in this approach, we are ignoring another important factor. We are only taking care of one factor of experience, and that is the object. We are ignoring the subject, the experiencer. And therefore, this approach is lopsided approach. Another limitation of this approach is the variables are many. Objects are of so many varieties. And if I try to make some adjustment in one place, something else comes up there, another place. And so as long as I am dependent upon setup, every now and then I get upset. You know, opposite of setup is upset. So I get upset because setup consists of various factors, and all the factors are not under my control. And therefore, every now and then I feel frustrated, disappointed. And therefore, one needs to look into one's approach towards life. That if I keep on adjusting with the world, if I keep on changing, trying to change the world, and thereby becoming happy, then my happiness, my peace will be unstable. And therefore, some people find the limitation of this approach, the approach of becoming happy by changing the world, which is a materialistic approach. And they try to focus on another factor, the factor called oneself, the experiencer, which is called the self. In Sanskrit, it is called Atma, and very poorly translated in English in some places as spirit. So what is said Atma in Sanskrit is correctly translated as the self and poorly translated as spirit. So the person who has started giving the importance to the correction in oneself, roughly called spirit, that person is called a spiritual person. So the point I want to highlight is, a person can be called spiritual when he or she has started giving importance to make corrections in oneself, giving the importance to self growth, inner growth, rather than making changes only in the world. So spirituality is the commitment to inner growth leading to self-discovery. In other words, when a person has stopped blaming the world unhappiness, insecurity, disturbance, and has started to correct oneself, then we can say that person to be spiritual. So spirituality starts when blame game stops. When you stop blaming the world for your insecurity, disturbance, unhappiness. And in spirituality, not so much importance is given to the external change. Many people think that spirituality means wearing mala. In fact, generally I don't wear mala, but just to give the example, that wearing mala means I have become spiritual. Growing beard, I have become spiritual. Or staying in the ashram means I have become spiritual. Or growing hair, I have become spiritual. So all these things are not really the main features of spirituality. A spiritual person may do all this. He may wear mala, he may grow beard, he may grow his hair because he doesn't have time and mind to go for haircut every now and then. But growing hair doesn't make you spiritual. Like scientists generally will have glasses, but doesn't mean all the people who have got glasses are scientists. So for to know the essential feature of spirituality is my commitment to inner growth, which will lead to self-discovery. So the spirituality, if you have understood in this manner, then our approach towards our sadhana will be proper. And as I said, in spirituality, there are two aspects. One is self-discovery, other is inner growth. What do we mean by self-discovery? Discovery or the knowledge of oneself is called self-discovery. Then some people may ask this question that why do we need to know the self? In fact, we know the self already. Everybody knows I am. But my knowledge about myself or my understanding and expression about myself exhibit confusion. Because sometimes I say I am fat, and sometimes I say this is my body. So I am fat. When I say, it means I am as good as the body is. And sometimes I say this is my body. So I am not sure whether it is I body or my body. And therefore, it looks like that a person is confused about what one is. I say I am fat, I am a man, I am a woman, I am dull, I am intelligent, I am emotional, I am angry, I am a son, I am a daughter, I am father, I am mother. What exactly you are? And a general law is that invariable is separate from variable. I am is invariable in all experiences. My being father, mother, son, daughter, fat, lean, emotional, angry, all of them are variables. And invariable is separate from these variables. In Shastra, they give the example that the thread which is invariable in all flowers in a garland, the thread is different from all the flowers. So I am is common in all my experiences. My being father, mother, son, daughter, etc. is variable. And therefore, I must be different from all these roles I am playing. Then who am I? That is to be discovered. And the discovery has to happen by using the appropriate means of knowledge. Because any knowledge requires means of knowledge. And for discovery of the self, we cannot use our eyes, ears, etc. Because the self is not available for the eyes to see, ears to hear. You cannot hear the sound of the self. You cannot see the color or the shape of the self. Therefore, perception will not be the means of knowledge. Inference also cannot be decisive means for the knowledge of the self, because inference is based on pratyaksha. And therefore, pratyaksha or anumana, perception or inference cannot become the means. And the only means available or presented in our tradition is the Shastra Pramanam, Shabda Pramanam, the Pramanam in the form of scriptures. And with the help of the scriptures, we understand the nature of the self. And when we understand the nature of the self, then I am free from ignorance and ignorance-born conclusion about myself. And when my understanding about myself changes, my perspective about myself changes. And when my perspective about myself changes, then my response to the world changes. This connection needs to be understood well. How I look upon myself decides how I will look upon the world. If a person thinks that I am cheated by the world, so who am I? I am cheated. Then his response, his approach to the world will be different. A person who thinks that I am blessed, his approach to the world will be different. So in relative sense also we can see this fact. How I look upon myself decides how I look upon the world. And my perspective about myself and the world will decide my response. And my response will decide the quality of my experience. And therefore, it is very important to know oneself, to change, to improve the quality of one's experience. And this self-knowledge, which is going to be the solution to the problem of ignorance and ignorance-born conclusions, is possible when I have got some inner growth. And inner growth comprises of certain factors. I would like to share with you some of the factors. A person can be said to be grown up inwardly when a person has got objectivity in life. What is objectivity? Objectivity means seeing things as they are, not less, not more. So a person who is mature, grown up inwardly, is the one who has got objectivity about all the objects, people and situation. Means he will not look upon any object for what it is not. For example, money. Money has got buying power. So if I see money as the means for buying things, it is objectivity. Money is useful in life, objectivity. Money can bring me some comforts, objectivity. Money can smoothen certain transactions, objectivity. But if I look upon money as the source of security, money will solve my sense of insecurity problem. Money will get me rid of this sense of insecurity, then it is subjectivity. Money cannot give me freedom from sense of insecurity. You tell me how much money you require to be free from sense of insecurity. Tell me one amount. Universally accepted amount. Tell me that Swamiji, if I have got 10 million rupees or dollars, then I will be free from insecurity. Is that accepted by all? I don't think so. No amount of money can give me sense of security. There is no amount. Which is Swamiji used to say that some people in the US, they will say, Swamiji, after earning this much money, I will go back to India. So they will say like that, Swamiji, within 1 year or 2 years, I will meet my target and I will go back to India. Then after 10 years, Swamiji meets that person is still there in the US. Target is changed. So he thinks that now this amount is not enough. This much amount is not enough. So there is no amount which can make the person feel secure. So money is useful. But if I look upon money as the solution to my problem of insecurity, it is subjectivity. Similarly, relationship with my parents, with my spouse, my children, my siblings, my friends is very important for my emotional growth. But if I look upon relationship as the means for fulfillment in life, then it is subjectivity. In fact, many people feel disillusioned because they expect too much from the relationship. They think that if I get married, my spouse will make my life fulfilled. Nobody can make your life fulfilled. You have to make your life fulfilled. So expecting the sense of fulfillment, complete satisfaction, complete fulfillment from relationship, that is subjectivity. So objectivity means seeing the object as it is. If I look upon relationship as the means for emotional growth, it is objectivity. So objectivity is a sign of inner growth. Second thing which is the mark of inner growth is relative self-acceptance. A person who has inner growth will have relative self-acceptance. Complete self-acceptance comes only after self-knowledge. But relative self-acceptance is a sign of inner growth. What do we mean by that? When I have relative self-growth, a relative self-acceptance, I will not look down upon myself. I will not look upon myself as victim of my destiny. I will not that I am cursed by destiny. In fact, when there is relative self-acceptance, there is a general feeling of being blessed. I am blessed to be what I am. I am blessed to have whatever I need. And self-acceptance also implies that I will consider myself to be capable of, fit for the spiritual pursuit, fit for the pursuit of moksha. Many people think that, Swamiji, I don't think I can get moksha. It is impossible for me. That is lack of self-acceptance. When you have got self-esteem, healthy self-esteem, you consider yourself to be deserving of happiness. You consider yourself to be fit for the pursuit you want to take up. In our context, a person thinks that, yes, I may have some limitations, but I am capable of pursuing freedom, capable of pursuing self-knowledge. If that attitude is there, and there is a general feeling of being blessed, then a person has got relative self-acceptance. And that is a sign of inner growth. The third sign of inner growth is the mind of the person is relatively calm, not restless. There is no physical restlessness and no mental restlessness. A person is relatively calm, not completely calm, but relatively calm. Calm enough, composed enough to pursue self-knowledge. And one more sign of inner growth is expansion of the mind. Person does not have narrow-mindedness. Person doesn't think that me and my family alone. Person will think in terms of the well-being of totality. A person does not harm others' interest to fulfill one's own interest. That person is called the person with expansion. As it is very beautifully said in our culture, Ayam nija paroveti ganana lagu chetasam udara charitanam tu vasudeva kutumbakam. So when a person has got inner growth, this is an indicator that person is having expansion of the mind. Broad-mindedness is that. Like the Prime Minister of India said, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. So you always take everybody along with you. Don't ignore the totality while taking care of individual. That is the sign of this inner growth. One more sign of inner growth which Pujya Swamiji used to emphasize so much, and that is compassion. When you grow, when you have got inner growth, when you have maturity, you will be more and more compassionate. And so compassion also is one of the indicators of inner growth. And one more sign of inner growth, which is an important one, which is highly emphasized in our Shastra, is desire for self-knowledge. Desire for self-knowledge is a sign of inner growth. When you have growth, you have inner growth, then your mind will start thinking, what is the goal of life? What is the purpose of human life? And thus, slowly you will inquire about the purpose of life, and you will have desire to know the self. And that which something which is connected to this is you will have clarity of the goal and the means. That also is a sign of inner growth. Pujya Swamiji used to use the word Purushartha Nishchaya. Purushartha Nishchaya means what? Ascertainment of the goal of life. I think all of you have studied Bhagavad Gita, Vyavasayatmika Buddhihi Samadho Vidhiyate. Before that, Vyavasayatmika buddhihi. So in the 40th sloka or 41st sloka, it is said that Vyavasayatmika buddhihi ekeha kuru nandana bahushakha shanantasya buddhayo vyavasayina. So when you have got clarity of the goal and means, you will be unidirectional. Means you will be following the track. You will not be distracted. You will not have back and forth movement. And all these are the indicators of inner growth. Question would be that how do we have this inner growth? Inner growth comes by leading a prayerful, dutiful life. Dutiful life means what? Doing what is to be done in a given situation. Playing one's role properly. Following the script of the role properly. And following the role with prayerfulness, with the awareness of Ishvara. Thus, life of Karma Yoga gives you this inner growth, which comprises the factors which we discussed: the self-acceptance, objectivity, composure, compassion, clarity of goal and means, and Atma Jignasa, the desire for self-knowledge. And when a person is mature, has inner growth, then he or she will go to the source of self-knowledge. The source of self-knowledge is the scripture. But the scripture cannot be studied independently. One needs to take the help of the teacher. So self-knowledge, when we say, it is not the knowledge by the self, it is the knowledge of the self. And this self-knowledge is to be gained by studying the scripture from a competent teacher. And this sadhana of studying the scripture with the help of a competent teacher is called Shravanam. So all of you are doing Shravanam from our Jai Kumarji. And this Shravanam will give you the vision of the scriptures, which is the vision about yourself. Many people have this question that Atma is inside, then why should we study the scripture outside? That question comes because people have not understood the place of the role of scriptures. Pujya Swamiji used to give a very good example. The example of mirror. If I want to see my face, what should I do? I have to take the help of a mirror. So even though I am looking at the mirror, my commitment is not to see the mirror. My commitment is to see myself with the help of a mirror. Similarly, when I am studying the scriptures, my commitment is not to study the scripture. My commitment is to know myself. So, studying the scripture is like looking at the mirror to see my face. Similarly, yes, studying the scripture is not for the purpose of studying the scripture. It is meant for getting the vision about myself, getting right understanding about myself. And once I have got the vision, I am free from ignorance. But sometimes, even after getting the vision of the scriptures, sometimes some people may have doubts that how the vision of the scripture can be right. My experience is that I am like this, scripture is telling something opposite, therefore some doubts can be there. And those doubts are resolved by the sadhana called mananam. So listening to the scriptures with the help of a teacher is Shravanam, and resolving the doubts is called Mananam. And after that, some habitual errors are there. They are resolved by the sadhana called Nididhyasanam. So Shravana, Manana and Nididhyasanam are the means for getting the vision of myself and assimilating the vision. What do we mean by assimilation of the vision? Assimilation means the vision of Shastra about me is no more the vision of Shastra. It has become my vision. Like right now, I consider myself to be a human being. This is not that somebody has taught and I say that these people are telling that I am a human being. I know that I am a human being. Similarly, when I say I know that I am limitless self, it is not a matter of belief for me. It is a matter of fact for me. Then there is assimilation of this vision. And for that, we have the sadhana of Nididhyasanam. So Shravana, Manana and Nididhyasanam help me to get the assimilated vision of myself. And you have been taught already, so I need not talk too much about what is the vision about the self. But just to briefly mention, Shastra gives me the vision about myself by starting with the Drik Drishya Viveka, means seer seen discrimination. Shastra says to know what you are, you follow this principle. Whatever you are aware of, you are different from that. So all the objects of the world you are aware of, and so you are very clear you are not that. The computer in front of me, I am aware of, it is available for objectification, so I am not the computer. Similarly, the dress, even though it is very close to me, but I am aware of the dress, I am not the dress. Shastra says you go one step further. The body also is something you are aware of. So it is a drishyam, it is an object. You are someone who is aware of this body. So I am aware of this body and therefore I am not this body. Further we go, sense organs, I am aware of, I am not them. The mind, I am aware of, I am not the mind. Who am I? I am aware of this body, senses, and the mind. I am awarer. But that is my relative introduction. I am awarer is my relative introduction. Who am I? I am the content of awarer called awareness, otherwise called consciousness. So who am I? I am consciousness. Not limited by this body, manifesting through this body, but not confined to this body. Like light is illumining the object, but not limited by the object. I am consciousness manifesting through this body, mind, sense complex, not limited by this body, mind, sense complex. And I consciousness do not have limitation of space, limitation of time, because I was, I will be, I am. And so I am free from limitation of time and space. Therefore, I am limitless. And limitless is called Brahma. So I am Brahma, limitless consciousness. And I, limitless consciousness, alone am the truth of this entire world. And therefore, I am Sarvatmakam Brahma. I am limitless reality, the truth of everything, manifesting as everything. Once I understand this, I am free from sense of limitation. And sense of limitation alone is the bondage. And thus, this knowledge makes me free from sense of limitation. And therefore, this knowledge is called Mukti Sadhanam, the means for freedom. But this knowledge to be effective, I need to be qualified. And for qualifications, we require the sadhana of Karma Yoga. And therefore, the vision of Shastra about moksha is you purify yourself by the sadhana of Karma Yoga, and having been purified, you follow the sadhana of Jnana Yoga, consisting of Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasanam. And by the sadhana of Jnana Yoga, you discover yourself to be free. And one important thing is, Shastra doesn't say that you will become free. Shastra says you are free. Only thing you have disowned your freedom. And Shastra helps you to own up your freedom. You must have heard the story of the 10th man. When that teacher tells the 10th man that you are the 10th man, he is not making the person 10th man. He is making the person discover that he is already the 10th man. Similarly, Shastra doesn't make you free. Shastra makes you own up your freedom. So when we study the Shastra, our approach has to be that I am not going to become free by the study of Shastra. I am already free. Let me see how I am free. It is not the way of becoming free, it is the way of discovery of freedom. And my commitment to the discovery of the self and my commitment to this inner growth, that is called spirituality. So let us understand this spirituality properly. My commitment to inner growth, my commitment to the self-discovery is called spirituality. Therefore, spiritual pursuit means the pursuit of inner growth, the pursuit of self-knowledge. All other things are incidental. Changing the dress is incidental. Staying in the ashram, incidental. Wearing Rudrakshamala, incidental. Growing beard, not growing beard, incidental. Superficial. It has nothing to do with what really spirituality is. Therefore, let us not connect spirituality with a particular place, particular dress, or particular even lifestyle. Only sannyasins are spiritual, grihasthas are not spiritual is not correct. Only those who are staying in the ashram, they are spiritual. Those who are staying at home, they are not spiritual is not correct. Those who are wearing white dress or orange dress, they alone are spiritual. Those who are wearing colored dress, pant, shirt, sari, they are not spiritual. Not correct. So let us not connect spirituality with external things. Let us understand the inner essence of spirituality and understand the significance of this spiritual pursuit. Many people ask this question that isn't spirituality selfishness? Means when you are having this spiritual pursuit, aren't you become selfish? This question can be answered in two ways. First of all, we say that there is no absolute selflessness. If we analyze, nobody is absolutely selfless. Everybody has got some amount of some type of selfishness. Sometimes we feel that the people who are dedicated to social service, they are selfless people. They are selfless people. They can be called selfless people, but they are not selfless in absolute sense. Why? Because if you ask them, why do you do this social service? They will say, I love it. I enjoy it. When I see a smile on the face of a poor child, it gives me so much joy. It means what? He or she is doing social service for what? One's own happiness. Therefore, nobody is absolutely selfless. But still, we have some working practical definitions for selfishness and selflessness. Let us understand it well so that we will not have unnecessary complexes or unnecessary guilt. We can say selfishness is pursuing one's happiness, ignoring or harming others' pursuit of happiness. When I pursue my happiness, when I work for my happiness or my growth, I ignore or even adversely affect others' growth, others' happiness, then I should be called selfish. When I take things from people and I don't contribute, I am selfish. But if I am studying scriptures or I am working for my inner growth without disturbing others' happiness, it is not selfishness. In fact, a person who is committed to inner growth will be an asset to the society, because a person who has got inner growth, as we have seen, the one sign of inner growth is expanded mind. Therefore, he will be including others' happiness in one's own happiness. And therefore, selfishness is pursuing one's happiness, ignoring or adversely affecting others' happiness. That is called selfishness. Whereas selflessness is what? Not ignoring others' happiness. In fact, including others' happiness in our pursuit of happiness, that is called selflessness. When you are including others' happiness, when you are not ignoring others' happiness while pursuing your own happiness, you are a selfless person in relative sense. Absolutely selfless, nobody is. But in relative sense, a person can be called selfless when he is mindful about others' happiness. When he tries to include others' happiness, that person can be called selfless. And therefore, we need not have any guilt about having spiritual pursuit. Of course, you need not be careless about your duties, irresponsible in playing your role, but spending some time for attending classes is also a part of human pursuit. And therefore, we need not have any feeling of guilt while attending classes, doing japa, or whatever sadhana helps us for inner growth and self-discovery. So let us be clear about what spirituality is, what is the role of spirituality. The spirituality brings harmony in my life. Spirituality brings harmony in the society. Spirituality makes the person non-violent, and therefore there will be non-violence in the society. So spirituality is a big blessing. More people have the spiritual pursuit, more harmony there would be in life. There will be more harmony in the world. Therefore, let us pray that let more and more people discover value for spiritual pursuit in real sense, and let everybody be blessed by the parampara and the Lord. With this, I conclude. If you have any question, you can ask.
Thank you, Swamiji. Swamiji, can you hear us?
Yes. I'm hear you. I'm not seeing you, but I'm
Oh,
able to.
okay. Yeah, thank you, Swamiji. We heard you very well, and audio was very clear. And thank you for giving us the message of, if I may call it, what is spirituality, and a word that many people use in different contexts, and they mean different things. And so Swamiji explained to us how to think about it. So I'm extroverted, I'm focusing on so many things. So I'm gaining experience because I want to improve my experience. And then, but we are ignoring one important aspect in that experience, which is the self itself, the Anubhavita Swamiji mentioned. And so by focusing on that oneself, a person who is committed to focusing on that oneself, using the Shastram, and thereby committed to self-growth and eventually studying the Shastram, that person may be called spiritual. I think that's the message Swamiji gave today, with many examples and with all the factors that characterize inner growth, and like objectivity and so forth, compassion and things like that. So Swamiji, audio was very good. We understood everything you said. And I think now our friends may have some questions. So I would like to invite questions from the audience. I'm going to set it up so that you can mute yourself at any time, unmute yourself at any time and ask your questions. If you can raise your hand, we can, yeah, Anjali Pinjala, and after that, Sunita Chivendra. Go ahead, Anjali.
Namaskar, Swamiji and Jai Kumarji. I have a question about the limitless, that's understanding of free from limitation. Swamiji, can you expound on that a little bit more as far as free from limitation? It's such a huge concept for me. I am not totally understanding what would that look like, or what would that mean?
Swamiji, you may have to unmute yourself.
Now,
Yes.
Yes. I'm not used. Okay. Now, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Amma, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, can I see you? I cannot see you now. Okay.
You can
Yes.
go to gallery view.
I would like to see the person whom I.
Sure. We can do that, sir.
Anjali.
Yes.
So, Anjali, first of all, I ask you, let us think about limitless afterwards. Do you feel yourself to be limited in any way?
Yes.
Are you getting me? Are you
I am
able to hear
getting
me?
you. Yes. And I'm following what you're saying, and I feel like one of the ways I can help myself to be less limited is some of the things I have written down here from your lecture is
Amma, I have asked one question. Do you feel limited? Am I questioning? Do you feel limited? I'm asking this. Do you feel?
I do feel limited. Yes.
In what way you feel limited?
So I think I need to do more self-acceptance and be more objective rather than subjective. Those, I think, of the different steps you have talked about as far as inner growth, those are the two major ones for myself that I feel like I need work on.
See, when you discover yourself to be what really you are, then the self non-acceptance will go away. Because self-knowledge makes you see to be the most acceptable one. When I discover myself to be what really I am, then I see myself to be completely acceptable. So when you understand yourself to be really you are, you will be free from this self non-acceptance. Completely free from self non-acceptance. Because the fact is, you are free from all limitations. When you see yourself to be free from all limitations, you are naturally acceptable to yourself. When you identify with something what you are not, then only you become non-acceptable. You will say, my memory is not good, my temper is not good, my body is not good. Your non-acceptance is always centered on what you are not. Are you getting what I'm saying? Your
Absolutely.
non-acceptance
Yes.
is centered on what you are not. Anatma.
Yes. Yes.
If you see yourself what really you are always acceptable. And therefore, the self-discovery will help you to discover self-acceptance. That is one answer. Second is to have relative self-acceptance. You bring the understanding of Ishvara as order. That whatever I have done in my life or not done in my life, everything was in order. And therefore, I am acceptable to Ishvara, I am acceptable to myself. There is a very beautiful way of seeing at oneself, looking at oneself, that how Ishvara will look at me. If you see Ishvara if you see yourself through the eyes of Ishvara, you will discover yourself to be acceptable. You know, so that is a relative means for self-acceptance. You look upon yourself from the understanding of Ishvara. How Ishvara, you have to understand what Ishvara is. So when you understand what the Lord is in the form of order, and you see yourself from the standpoint of order, you will see yourself acceptable. Another point you said, objectivity. More you try to be committed to the facts. Let me see the fact of a thing rather than my superimposing the ideas. Let me see what is. Let me be committed to what is. Let me not project my own thinking and use appropriate means of knowledge to evaluate a situation, to understand the situation, to understand any object. Then more and more you will be objective. First of all, you develop the value for objectivity. Value for objectivity is the first step for developing the objectivity. And whenever you see the subjectivity in yourself, analyze the basis for it. Why are we becoming subjective? Because of our past impressions. So let us learn to see the situation without the glasses of our impressions, glasses of our past experiences. Let us learn to see things afresh. More and more you develop that habit, you will be more objective. And as I said, first of all, have the value for being objective. Because sometimes we find security in subjectivity. Please tell me.
Right. So in
You don't want to think like some people say, I don't want to go to the clinic or laboratory because some result will come and it will be frightening. So some people want to remain in fool's paradise. So let us come out of that fool's paradise.
yeah,
At least have the value for coming out of it.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Thank you so much, Swamiji.
Okay.
Thank you so
Anybody
much.
else?
Thank you, Swamiji. Sunita Chavendra.
Namaste,
If
Swamiji.
anybody of you want to carry on. Namaste, ma. Namaste. Are you able to see me?
Yes, I'm able to see you only.
Because I am not seeing what I am doing to you. Okay, you are able
Oh,
to
yeah,
see me. Okay.
I'm
Great.
able to. You kind of
Yes,
alluded
Timing.
to the answer a bit, answering Anjali ji's question. But my question was, you mentioned that how do we have inner growth? It is by leading a prayerful and dutiful life, having the presence of Ishvara in your life. So my question was, what is the role of Ishvara in our spiritual life? And how do we convert how do we have an accurate worldview, or how do we convert our perceptions that become reliable and valid in our path, in our spiritual path?
Last
Because we
part,
keep
how do
world
we
perceptions,
make
how
our
do we
perception
convert it?
valid? How do we?
How do we validate those
Okay.
perceptions?
Yeah, if perception is valid, you validate. Invalid perception, you need not validate. Anyway, let me
How
come
do
to
I
your
know?
question.
How do I know
That
that
whether
it
it
is
is valid.
valid or invalid?
Yes. Of course, there are means of knowledge for knowing. We have got scripture as the means of knowledge. And one basic thing, there are basic principles which we understand from the scriptures and the teachers, that nothing in this world is source of happiness. So if I look upon some object to be the source of happiness, then understand that you have got some subjectivity. Happiness is not the quality of the object. Happiness is something superimposed upon the objects by me. So if I am looking upon some object as the source of happiness, as the source of security, understand it is subjectivity. And other thing is that if you are not afraid of analysis about the object, know that you are objective. In objectivity, there is openness to the inquiry. Means you are ready to change your opinion. Pujya Swamiji used to use very nice expression. Whenever you say anything about any object, you say, in my perception, it is like this. Don't put a full stop. You say, in my perception, this object is like this. In my perception, the situation is like this. By using this word, my perception, you are expressing your openness to correct. So in objectivity, there is readiness for analysis. There is openness to correct oneself. So that is how you will have this understanding that you have objectivity or not. And you don't make conclusion before analysis. Before understanding the object, before listening to other person, you don't make conclusion. You can have some provisional conclusion sometimes required, but make sure that they are provisional conclusion. Don't make a rigid conclusion. In objectivity, there is no rigidity. Yes. And if required, if you have a doubt, we can always consult our elders, our guides, that this is my conclusion about this situation. If you have a doubt, please consult. In our Shastra, it is said, whenever you have a doubt in life, you consult the learned people. Because life is very dynamic. Some guideline principles can be given. Everything cannot be taught, isn't it? And therefore, we have the openness of the mind, can have provisional conclusion ready to correct. And if doubt, you consult the learned people.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
Swamiji. Thank you, Swamiji.
Yes.
Mohan Sai Krishna from Hyderabad.
All right.
Swamiji.
Namaste.
Swamiji, my you.
You're not audible, Mohan Sai, not
I'm
audible.
not able.
Very feeble, very feeble.
Right now, Guruji.
Now I am able to hear a little bit.
Okay.
Right now I heard.
Yeah. Namaste, Swamiji. You actually alluded this little bit in your lecture today. My basic question is, I wanted to know, what is moksha? We call mukti, moksha. We say like it's getting rid of the birth and death cycle, or we also say like reaching the Lord's feet, or getting unified with Him, with the Lord. So all this you rightly said. I mean, maybe this is, I learned a lot about the relative self acceptance. Sometimes it seems so distant, so impossible to reach moksha, because can we even go? Can we even
Look
you know
distant, but
so I wanted to know this, the concept of mukshatvam, moksha, mukti, jivan mukti. Are these all same, and what does it really mean for people who are we can say like spiritual path, and what is the end goal?
I think you asked so many questions. Let us go one by one. First of all, I will talk about moksha. You said, what is this moksha? I think that is your question, isn't it? First question, if I have understood clearly. Okay.
Yes, Swamiji.
Moksha means freedom from bondage. To understand moksha, we have to understand bondage. Do you feel bound or not? That is my question. First of all, question is that. Do you feel bound or not? Huh? Do you feel bound or do you feel limited in any manner?
We definitely, I mean,
Do you feel
from
bound?
yes, bounded by so many things in the world, from the worldly experiences
So
every day.
freedom from the bondage which you are experiencing now is called moksha. I am not talking, but did I say in my talk that freedom from Janma Marana cycle and reaching the lotus feet of the Lord? I did not use these words. I did not say. Freedom means, moksha means freedom from the bondage which you are experiencing. Let us not talk about anybody's this book description. Are you feeling bound or not? Freedom from that bondage which you are experiencing is called moksha. Let us not have any other definition. Freedom from the bondage which you are experiencing is moksha. Is it a workable definition or not? Or it
Yes,
is too theoretical?
it
Is
is
it theoretical? Is working definition or not? Can you conceive this idea or not?
definitely we can conceive
Freedom
the
from
idea.
the
Yes,
bondage
yes.
which you are experiencing.
But
Yes.
uh, but is it
How it is
100%
possible?
achievable?
Yes, that doubt remains initially. But we say that yes, it is achievable. It is achievable. One pramanam is Shastra, other pramanam is Vidvat Purusha. We have seen the people who have discovered the freedom. And therefore, we have reasons to accept that I am capable of getting that moksha. Initially, one would have some apprehension because of one's background. That is why relative self-acceptance is not there. So when relative self-acceptance is there, you will find yourself to be capable of pursuing moksha. You will see the sense of possibility. Because of your strong background of non-acceptance may make you think that it is impossible. Like somebody who is very diffident will feel, I cannot become graduate. I cannot become, because it's feeling so diffident. But if he works, it is possible. So first of all, one has to see the sense of possibility of moksha, and that itself requires some inner growth. That is why I said inner growth, one sign of inner growth is self-acceptance. And one sign of self-acceptance is seeing oneself capable of pursuing moksha, seeing moksha as a solid possibility. Not a rare possibility, is a solid possibility. Yes, I can become free. I can discover freedom. Why not? It is possible. Is it clear?
Yes, Swamiji. Definitely, I think with what background you gave earlier and this one, I think
Yes, it takes
definitely
time.
clear.
It takes time. Let us be honest. Yeah, no problem. Yes. Okay. Namaste. Have we done with it? Yes. Jai Kumar ji, are
Any
you
other
there?
que- I'm here, Swamiji. Yeah, go ahead, Bhagyashree. You had a question?
Anybody has question? Anybody?
Yes, Swamiji. Yeah, there is one more question.
Yeah, I just want to know, I heard the word Purushartha Nishchaya and Mukti Sadhana. Can you please explain that?
Now it is not audible.
Purushartha Nishchaya and Mukti Sadhana. Can you please explain what is the meaning of that?
Yeah. What does it mean? Okay. Nishchaya means ascertaining. Purushartha means the human goal. Purushartha means, Purusha means a person. Artha means goal. So Purushartha means human goal, and Nishchaya means ascertaining, understanding clearly, making up one's mind. That is called Nishchaya. So Purushartha Nishchaya means ascertaining, making up one's mind about the human goal. What is the goal of my life? I am becoming clear about it, then it is called Purushartha Nishchaya. Purushartha, human goal. Nishchaya, ascertainment. Understanding clearly is called Nishchaya. Understanding firmly and clearly is Nishchaya. Purushartha is human goal. So Purushartha Nishchaya means ascertaining, understanding very clearly what is the goal of my life. That is Purushartha Nishchaya. Is it clear?
Yes, thank you. And Mukti Sadhana is a
What else you
moksha.
had asked?
Is
Mukti sadhana means the means for moksha. The means for moksha is self-knowledge, and self-knowledge is possible by the purity of the mind, and purity of the mind is possible by karma yoga. Therefore, karma yoga, I hope you have been given the idea about karma yoga. So, karma yoga is the indirect means for moksha, mukti sadhana, and self-knowledge is the direct means for moksha, mukti sadhana. So Mukti Sadhana means the means for freedom, and they are of two types: direct, which is self-knowledge, and indirect, Karma Yoga.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you very much.
Yes. So Jaykumarji, shall we conclude, or
Yes.
is there anybody else?
Yeah, we will conclude, Swamiji. Just one show of sign. Let's see if there's anybody else who has a question. Yeah, Girish ji has a question, Swamiji. It will be the last question. Go ahead, Girish ji.
Yeah. Does God exist?
Yes,
Does
yes,
God
God
exist?
exists. Yes. Yes,
And
God exists. Yes.
okay, then how do we relate in our day-to-day life, please?
God can be related to by seeing Him as order. What makes a given thing is the order. Means, for an example, if object is falling down, there is a physical order. That physical order can be appreciated as Ishvara.
Okay. Okay.
So you can appreciate Ishvara in various ways. And one of the effective ways is to appreciate Ishvara as the order. That which makes a given thing that particular thing. A pot is a pot because of certain order, and that order is Ishvara.
Okay.
You are the way you are because of the order. That order is Ishvara. So every moment you can appreciate Ishvara's presence. I am able to talk and you are able to hear. That is because of the order, and that order is Ishvara. You are sad, then also sadness is governed by the order. You can appreciate Ishvara.
Very good.
Every moment in every experience, you can appreciate the presence of Ishvara as the order.
Thank you. Thank you.
There are other ways, but this is one of the important and useful ways of appreciating Ishvara's presence.
Thank you.
Most fundamentally, we appreciate Ishvara as the existence, but for that we require more subtlety, more preparedness. If we are more prepared, we can appreciate Ishvara as the very existence of everything. But before that, it is better to appreciate Ishvara as the order.
Thank you. Thank you, Guru. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Swamiji. Swamiji, do you have a few more minutes? If you want to go, that is fine, Swamiji. We can conclude. There is one more question also, but it is all right, Swamiji. We have the time, but we want to make sure you have the time, Swamiji. Okay. Okay.
Today do it, yeah, because.
Okay. Thank you, Swamiji. Narayananji, go ahead.
Namaste, Swamiji.
Namaste.
My question is, what is the role of free will? If everything is Ishvara's order, where does free will stand?
Last part I could not hear. But
What
I
is
have
the
understood.
role of free will? Because everything is Ishvara's order.
Everything is.
Because when we are in this path, we understand at a point that everything is Ishvara's order, as per his order.
In Ishvara itself, there is a provision for free will. I have understood your question. Question is, what is the role of free will when everything is order of Ishvara? My answer is, in the order of Ishvara itself, there is a provision for free will. So free will is not against the order of Ishvara. I hope the meaning of the word order has been explained. Jaykumarji, have you explained about the order?
Yeah, I think so, Swamiji.
Jaykumar?
Yes, I think I explained to some extent, Swamiji.
So, order does not mean destiny. Order does not mean predeterminism. Order only is the law which governs the cause and effect. And therefore, order does not interfere with the place of free will. Free will is a part of the order. And therefore, we need not think that we don't have free will because there is order of Ishvara. Order of Ishvara does not mean that Ishvara has decided everything. That is not what we mean by the order. When anything happens, it happens as per certain law. That is called order. If I do a right action, I get right result. This is called order of karma. I have freedom. I have free will to do a right action. Good action. If I do a right action, I will get good result. That is order. And therefore, there is allowance for free will in this order. I hope it is clear.
Yes, Swamiji, thanks a lot.
Clear,
Thank
ma?
you so much.
Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you. Any other questions? Swamiji has graciously agreed to be with us. So you're welcome to any other questions.
Okay.
Welcome to ask Swamiji.
So now we can conclude.
Okay. Thank you very much, Swamiji. So I just wanted to quickly summarize some very important points Swamiji made just in the last 10-15 minutes. So question on what was this non-acceptance versus acceptance. Swamiji said non-acceptance is centered on what I am not. So I found that to be very, very profound. Therefore, if I see myself as acceptable, then that is an important aspect of moksha. Second thing he said was, if I see myself through the eyes of Ishvara, then I will find myself to be acceptable to myself. So that was something I noted. And then happiness is something I superimpose on every object that I experience. That was also very profound, I felt. And then Swamiji mentioned, Puja Swamiji used to mention that when I say something is like that, he's like that, or she's like that, I also should add, in my perception, this person is like that, my friend is like that, my son is like that, etc. Which means I am allowing myself for the possibility of being wrong and being corrected. So those are very important points. And Swamiji finally also mentioned moksha. He gave a working definition of moksha, which is that freedom from bondage or even the sense of bondage that I am experiencing now. So thank you very much, Swamiji, for being with us. And I know your schedule is, Swamiji is teaching a course in the ashram, and this is constant, many classes every day. And Swamiji teaches the Vedanta classes, and so he's constantly teaching. And so given that schedule, we are very happy that he could be here. And when I told Swamiji about our trust and the courses that I feel like teaching through the computer, through this Zoom, and Swamiji joked at me. He said, "Oh, e-moksha." So like that he was saying. So I said, "E-moksha or not, I don't know, Swamiji, but it's going to be Bhagavad Gita." So I think Swamiji's blessings is there with all of us. I am really happy that he agreed to be with us. And Swamiji, any final words, Swamiji?
Shall we conclude with Shanti Patha?
Yes, Swamiji, we can conclude with Shanti Patha. Yeah.
Yes.
Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you very much, Swamiji. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It was a blessing to hear you
Thank you very
speak.
much,
Thank
Swamiji.
you.
Namaskaram.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Swamiji.
Thank
Swamiji.
you so much.
Pranam, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji. Pranam, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Humble pranam. Humble pranam.
So that Swamiji, we have, okay, Swamiji left. Okay. So was the audio all right, mostly for all of you?
Very
Yes,
good.
yes.
Yes,
Very good.
Yeah, very good.
I had some difficulty. Maybe it was just my internet that was giving me a little bit of trouble. But just occasionally it go down, come up, go down, come up.
Yeah, yeah.
We had that experience.
Yeah.
A bit
Yeah, I
of
think we're
trouble
used to
was there.
that now. We fill in the gaps. We are used to it.
Fill in the
All-
gaps.
Hopefully the recording will come out very nice in case you want to listen. Yeah.
Correct.
About everything. It was beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
Jayakumarji, can I ask a question?
Can you ask?
Please.
Yeah. Go ahead. I don't think I can improve on Swamiji, but you are welcome to ask a question.
It's just a general question, and it's somewhat personal. I was thinking whether someone like Swamiji, who has so much knowledge, and so, I mean, just looking at his face, do you think someone like that has attained moksha?
Yeah. So do you think somebody like Swamiji and others have gained moksha?
Yeah.
So, see, when we ask the question like that, it can be misconstrued as making a judgment on somebody. It can be. I'm not saying it is. It can be.
Yeah.
So it's like saying, when I go see a doctor, okay, I go see a gastroenterologist or somebody. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Then if somebody asks you, did he pass the exam on gastroenterology? Do you believe this man? He has a degree, all right, but is this man trustworthy or not? You know?
Yeah.
So that question is there, no doubt. But what we do is this: we go by what we see in the community.
Exactly.
We go by what we see in the community. So if we don't know, then we look around and we look at other people whom we respect, and then what do they think of this person? Okay. Then if they think, if I respect person X and the person X highly respects this person Y, then that person Y is somebody I will follow. That's all we can do, right? So you buy a book to read. Buying a book to read, buying a book is a big step. Then reading the book is the next big step, because we all have a lot of books that we have not read. We've got big libraries of books which have not read. So reading the book is the next step. Who do you read? Clearly somebody whom you respect a lot and whom you've heard a lot about, right? And somebody, you go to a party and somebody says, hey, I read this book by Wayne Dyer.
Did you read it? Then it strikes you, my God, I have this book, I'm not even read it.
Yeah.
So
It's not so much as passing, trying to figure out if he's qualified. Of course, that was never a question. But what I was thinking about is that, is it attainable? Because to me, he's so great, and he's so knowledgeable. And does he have more? Can he, it's almost like, can we experience that in this life, the moksha that we're talking about? Because someone like him, is it possible for him to do that? Or even for yourself? I was even thinking about you for, yourself. So I just want to kind of, in my mind, kind of imagine what that looks like in someone that I see. Not passing any kind of qualification or anything. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah. So as Swamiji said clearly to one of the questions, Mohan Sai's question about what is moksha, and is moksha even possible in this life? Right?
Yeah.
That is the question. Because it looks great, and at the same time, it's, is this something? Is it for me? I mean, can I even achieve it in this life?
Yeah.
That's a question. So Swamiji's answer was, I noted that Swamiji's answer, which is, we see a lot of sannyasis in our midst. They are alive. They are there in front of us. They are living in the same world that we are living. So that's proof for you that moksha is possible for anybody. And these people are from varying backgrounds. They are from various parts of the world, and they have various technical backgrounds. Some of them are doctors, some of them are psychologists like you, and so many backgrounds you see. And so it's very clear that it is a distinct possibility. And there is a word called Jivan Mukti. Jivan Mukti means moksha while living. So these are clues to us that this is meant for us and in this life, not for later. And that is why they always say this human life is a very precious thing, and do not waste it away in other things which is not a big deal to say I did this and I did that. Anybody can do that. And so that's a message we take. So we look at the message, Anjali, and not so much the messenger. The message, does it resonate with you? Mm-hmm. The message, is that, do you have a conviction in the message?
Yeah.
That is the key. And if not, let's keep going and keep hearing it again and again until we gain a conviction in that. Correct? And so you've seen your own friends, and many of them have pursued this path, and so that is the evidence for you that this is a distinct possibility for us. Yeah, good question, Anji.
Take a comment, Jaykumarji. So I mean, the way I think of it is not every one of us needs to be a technologist to use a phone, right? There are people who build the phones, and there are people, and they publish a manual, we use it, and we all benefit from it. So I feel like that's how, I mean, Sadatmananda-ji is, and I mean, people like these are, because they're distilling the, essence of all these scriptures and providing them to us. So I think it should be possible for us too, if we are committed. We don't have to all go and, become sannyasis or anything, but I feel like we can still be committed to inner growth and take advantage of what they're providing.
Yes. So Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. So it is to be done by us and understood by us here and now. And anybody with a mind can process it and understand it. And it doesn't say you must be in a particular place. Swamiji also, if you noticed, he made it very clear that having a beard is not a sign of spirituality. Need not be a sign of spirituality. Wearing a particular cloth need not be a sign of spirituality. And so, like this, scientists often are short-sighted, so they wear glasses. And so just because of that, you don't say everybody who has a glass is a scientist. So I think, yeah, that's the message. And that's what makes it very appealing. That's what makes it very appealing. It is just that we may have been a little far removed. We may have questions like, how come
I missed all this? That feeling may be there. Yeah, I can understand all this. This is amazing. I missed out. So I spent 60 years and I missed out. That feeling may be there, it's possible. Many of us have that feeling. And so we don't allow such feelings to overwhelm us. We just go with the flow, and the Shastram says it will deliver the goods. So
maybe it's never late than never.
Right. Better late than never, huh?
And also one should experience that limitlessness or limitedness, right, to understand that there is an alternative. Right? It's in your own experience. Swamiji was asking, right? Do you feel limited in any way? It is a very individual experience or feeling.
Correct.
I really like the idea when he says that part of growth or self-knowledge is being able to accept what you have done in the past and not keep punishing yourself or looking back at regret. So I think for me, that's very powerful.
Yeah, exactly. So that is so important.
Because that means you have to grow out of these feelings of guilt and feelings of hurt, and one has to grow out of it. So we need to process all that so that we can move on. Because if I'm holding on to my past constantly, that means I'm not looking forward, I'm looking backward. And so it's basic psychology, Anjali, is it right? And isn't that so? And so, yeah, that's very important. Our sannyasis recognize that very much. And so often I've seen Swamiji giving advice to many people, many people, including me. And his advice is always practical. And he will address the problem at hand. He is not interested in pushing Vedanta into the person. Okay, no, that is not a Shastra. Our Shastram does not recommend that. There is always a time for Vedanta, but if there are even more pressing problems, emotional problems, you have to address that. Only then the doors of Vedanta will open.
That's right. That's right.
Totally believe in that.
Yeah.
Creating that space for it to come in.
Yeah.
Any other observations, comments, thoughts?
I think the possibility of moksha is through inner acceptance and growth. That is the core words to which he had addressed. The possibility of moksha is through the inner acceptance and inner growth. So we are already in the pursuit of growth.
Correct. Absolutely. So our Sampradaya, Puja Swamiji has made it, he's drilled it in everybody that there are no shortcuts. So let this not become an escape route. No, somebody may say, oh, this is very attractive and I want to do. Yeah, you're welcome. Let it be attractive. That's good. But you can't just run away from what is to be done. And cleaning the house is important. And today morning also we talked about self-assessment and things like that. So it's which is good. I think that makes this journey very rewarding. There is no anxiety about the future. Oh, will I get moksha in this life or not? No, that's not the way we approach it. When we studied in the school, we were at 6th grade, and we just have to study till 12th grade, and then I have to go to college, and then I have to do 4 years of college. My God, none of us thought like that. We just studied, and one day we ended up in college, and we did things, and then suddenly we found a job. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. No child should be anxious about studying and getting a degree. That's my belief. Okay.
No, true. Very true.
Any other thoughts?
I think it was very concise.
Yeah.
Very concise of what we learned in the Tattva Bodha class.
I think it was more practical application of what we learned.
Yeah. But to follow up on, to add on to Anjali's question is similar. I think what she was asking was that, like what in Bhagavad Gita we learn, how a person walks, how a person looks, how a person sits, who is attained moksha. That I think that's what Anjali ji was referring to.
Right, exactly.
Right, so then I can relate to, okay, this qualification of this person, I can see attain moksha.
Yeah, so is this real? Is this real, right?
So you relate. That's
is it worth jumping ship?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or
No,
how do I know whether I
I have-
reached that point?
Yeah.
I have a lot of irons in the fire, and and this is coming up. My God, this is interesting.
And how much should I invest in this particular journey? That question will be
Yeah.
there.
Because we always want to get feedback, right? We always have a rear view mirror in the car. We always want to get feedback. So once we compare to someone, we know how far we are from that person.
Yeah.
Whether it is, that's what it is all the time.
Yeah.
So otherwise it's like pursuing something unknown, right? So
Yeah, this is why. This is why.
That's why Swami Tattvadanandaji's answer comes to me. So once somebody had asked him, Swami Tattvadanandaji, for those of you who know him, and we call him a walking encyclopedia, okay? And he's another person like our Swami Sadatmanandaji. He knows everything, it seems like, and they do indeed. And so somebody asked him in satsang, I was there in Saylorsburg in Pennsylvania. Somebody asked him in satsang, Swamiji, what is the secret of your success? What a question it is, huh? To ask him. And Swamiji himself started laughing. And so Swamiji gave a fantastic reply. I don't know whether I'm successful or not. That you decide. I didn't say I'm successful. You are just coming and listening to me. If you think I'm successful, well and good. But my secret to where I am is because I've spent a lot of time with sannyasis. I used to go to ashrams. Whenever a sannyasi used to visit us in Hyderabad, and I used to attend their yajna. And so I used to connect with them. And of course, Swamiji's father also was a big Sanskrit scholar and a Vedic scholar. He learnt all the Vedas from his father. So that also was there. And so this is the answer he gives. So it means secret of success. That means we have to, the message there is, whenever we get an opportunity, we be in the presence of sannyasis. It doesn't matter whether we understand their Gujarati or their Bengali or whatever. It doesn't matter. Just sit there. Like a dog, our pet dog will come and sit when something is going on, right? Just like that. I am willing to sit because even though I don't know the language, just the ambience, that energy, that thing that is going on, I need it. I need more and more of it. And so that's the attitude with which we approach this. And so in time, it takes us where we need to go.
I thought the Swamiji's answer would be, if you all think I'm successful, I'm successful. So if you all perceive me to be successful.
So, Maheshji, Swamijis don't use those words like success and all. They've given up.
Yeah, I know.
And so therefore, it's okay, successful. You have, if all people out there think that Swamiji is successful, that means that's a good thing. That means they are actually appreciating this whole culture. Swamiji used to say, Puja Swamiji, look at our dress. We're all so different. Try wearing this dress and walking through the airport, okay? Yeah. And you see how if all eyes are on you and everybody's watching you like this. As though you are a zebra walking in the airport, okay? Or a giraffe. And this is what Swamiji used to say. And then the customs, they open the suitcase like this and they look into the suitcase. And Swamiji would say, all are orange clothes, okay? These are orange clothes, orange dhoti, orange towel, orange dhoti, orange towel, orange this, orange that. And then they look at you. What can this guy do? What will he do? Very different. And he closes. Oh, and then Swamiji would say, I used to keep them in good humor. And so, oh, Halloween has come a little too soon for me. And so, Swamiji used to say that. And so, what can you do? What can you do? Everybody's staring at you, and are you supposed to reply? Are you supposed to keep quiet? Are you supposed to have fun? Decide. So I think this culture is just amazing, and I've been amazed with it ever since I came to know about it. I never had a value for sannyasa and all that. I didn't know anything about this culture, and I didn't know what a sannyasi is, etc. So I also learned along the way. also learned. So
Yeah,
yeah,
but the issue is, Jayakmarji, also is in India, there are so many so-called fake people also. So that's where the issue is. As he rightly pointed out, everybody who wears Kashaya Vastram doesn't mean he is that. I mean, we see, I mean, yeah, that is where the, how do we distinguish?
again, same thing, same answer. I'm going to give you the same answer to that. Okay.
The answer is this.
You've got a medical establishment, you've got cardiologists, you've got gastroenterologists, you've got pediatrists, you got everybody. Not everybody is genuine. You go out there, you go well, and you come out without wrong kidney. They replace the wrong kidney. Okay, what do? These things happen. How come these things happen? Same thing here also. You can expect the same thing. It's not like this is a foolproof system, and then same thing. We need to be open to that, and so that's why we have to rely on. When we go to a city, new city, when I went to Houston or when I came to Coimbatore, I had asked people, good doctor, can you recommend few good doctors? That is the way we go, right? Otherwise, how do you go to a good doctor? You can't find a good doctor. They don't say in the thing, gastroenterologist, good doctor. They don't say that. And even if they say that, you can't believe that. So that's how it works, Mahesh ji. And also, therefore, Google helps. Sometimes Google helps me. Sometimes. And these days they're hiring people to put 5 stars in some of their that's not right. That's not right at all. That's adharma.
You in the past, right? Your experience too with them. So if listening to them has really helped you, then
yes, absolutely.
And I like this statement, my perception of the object is ... Because when I started my career, when I first started working in India, one gentleman who came, I don't remember the company, he said, as a normal in a human relation, he said, instead of saying somebody is right, wrong, if you say, I perceive you to be wrong, or I perceive you to be this, then that ownership is on you. So your response from that person, you will not be defending that right away. So that's exactly what I saw. It kind of came back to me after 40 years. So.
Correct. Very important. In our conversations, we need to be alert to that. Never stop. If we ever say, you said this, it is better to say, I learned this in the US. I heard you saying this.
Yeah.
I love that. I really love that. When I first heard it, I said, wow, this is such a mature way of talking. I think I heard this. Okay, that's it. That puts a burden on this person. I may be wrong. I think I heard. Am I right or wrong? It's not, are you right? If you're wrong, you prove yourself. And you can't discredit me like this. The burden is on us. So I love that way of communicating.
Actually, we use that a lot with couples and marriage counseling, because there's always argument about who knows what and what. So if you say, I hear you, or I hear you saying that, it's like, I'm not blaming you. This is what I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong. So we use that in
Exactly, yeah. So marriage counseling, that it looks like that's a very important portion of learning how to communicate with the two,
yes.
right?
Oh my God, yes. That's always a big problem.
Excellent.
Jaykumarji, one question. Self-acceptance and inner growth, I missed some portion because of our failure here. But the beginning portion, when I heard self-acceptance and inner growth would also eventually lead us to have acceptance to everything around us, right? Because even that is required for our own spiritual growth. Acceptance of all people, situations around us.
Yeah, so what is your question?
No, so I'm saying with this inner work, when you work on yourself, this would automatically happen, I guess, right? This is a byproduct of self-acceptance and inner growth, that we accept everything, because people will be all different. They will continue to be the way they are, right? Everything around us. Many times, that is what disturbs us more than our own self-acceptance. Most of us might have come as so far. I guess we are in a mode of self-acceptance, but accepting someone else may not be very easy, right? So I think that comes with inner growth, probably that will develop, I guess. This is something which needs to be a part of our spiritual growth. accepting whatever your situations may not always be very great, but still we should be able to accept it and still move on.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. So it's the minimum that's required.
That I have to accept myself first in order to accept everybody else as they are. Accepting everybody else as they are does not mean saying that whatever everybody does is correct. Accepting everybody as they are means, yeah, people are what they are. I don't need to be defensive about that. I don't need to feel hurt about that. I don't need to feel guilty about that. And people are like that. And if it is my duty to point out something, hey, what you're doing is wrong, you should not do this. You just lied to your teacher. It's not correct. That comes from objectivity. That comes from accepting people as they are. And it may look as though, why am I criticizing? No, I'm not criticizing. I'm pointing out something that I feel is wrong. And so, yeah, so that everything comes, and we see, finally, Swamiji, Puja Swamiji used to say this. He used to say, Vedanta will make us into normal human beings. Please make a note of that. We are not going to get a halo on the back of the head, start floating, no, nothing. We will become normal human beings. We think we are normal, but Vedanta will make us normal. What a human being ought to be, and of course the vision is drastically different, and that's what makes us normal. But normal means objective. Normal means accepting of others as they are, and things like that without any confusion. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Vijayji. Good. So I think we've been here for quite a while. I'm not even
2.5 hours.
Now, started 6:58. 6:58.
Yeah, 2 hours.
58. Okay. Good. So I think let me see. We can do this more often also. Because of this COVID, I kind of was hesitating, but now that I saw Swamiji is also ready to come, we'll see. Swami Shankaranandaji is there, Vishwatmanandaji is there. I've spoken to him, and like this, they're ready to share their perspectives with us. And so,
thank you very much.
If you're all ready, we can repeat this in the future also.
Thank you very much.
Jai Kumarji, thank you so much for creating this forum for us. This is
thank you very much.
Very heartfelt. Thank you very much.
Guruji.
Thanks to all of you. Thanks to all of you.
Thanks for
We'll meet again the next class. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dhanyavad.
ಧನ್ಯವಾದः. ಶುಭ